The story begins inside a game in the forest of Woolberry where there was an extremely wounded warrior because he and his army had been completely decimated by the army of the woman sitting on the throne, and one of her subordinates commented that the target still hadn't appeared. The woman on the throne ordered the warrior to be killed at once, and as the executioner prepared to carry out the order with an axe, someone appeared and interrupted the blow, knocking the executioner out of the way. That person was Jae-hyun, who had appeared there to help the defeated army, and apparently, he was the real target the other army was looking for. When they all went at Jae-hyun, he had no trouble taking down every single person who came his way. And as he fought, he questioned whether they'd be really thought they could win on numbers alone, making it clear that even with the advantage, they still weren't good enough. The name he used was Hokan, but his real name was Jae-hyun, a member of the Haho Mask Guild, known by the title of Hero Killer. The army he had helped was sorry and apologized, saying that the ambush in the forest was their fault because they hadn't thought things through. Hokan said that there was no reason to apologize, held out his hand to them, and told them that everything was fine and that now they needed to get up. Everyone was moved, and he explained that it wasn't their fault, but the fault of those pathetic losers who can't fight fair, saying this while staring at the woman on the throne. This woman was called Sarah, but her real name was Chae Seol-yeon, a powerful member of the Thunder Hunters Guild, known by the title of Queen of Thunder. Hokan said it was funny to hear that coming from her, who was always getting beaten up by the same trash she despised. Sarah then told him to watch his words or he had end up regretting it. Hokan activated his inventory and equipped himself with his real armor and weapon, saying that regret was the stuff of wimps like her. Angrily, Sari ordered the army to kill him, and Hokan only replied that they'd never learned because people like them would never be able to kill him. However, at that moment, Hokan was stabbed in the back by his own companions. He lost a lot of blood, and the system alerted him that he was in critical condition. The group commander apologized, saying that everyone there needed to survive and that it was nothing personal. As he bled out, Hokan couldn't believe what was happening. Sarah began to laugh at him, saying that he was really pathetic for thinking that they would fall for that little friendship act. To her, friendship meant nothing when money was involved. Sarah said that she would take him out of that game forever, and if she managed to kill him every time he logged in, he would never be able to play again because she had heard that he worked with that. If he lost the game, he lost everything. Without it, he was just useless trash. When he tried to get up to fight back, he was hit again by the same people he considered friends, and he could hardly move. Sao thanked everyone for a job well done, and Hirakan asked why they had done it, as that guild meant everything to him. One of the members replied coldly that they were being paid millions to kill him and asked what he expected them to do if they refused. Hirakan wondered if after all he had done for them, after they had called him family, this really was the end of him, and then he died. The system informed him that he had been restricted for 48 hours before he could log in again. He then woke up at home inside the virtual reality capsule and thought that he had lost everything. It was then explained that Warlord was a game that dominated the global rankings, a virtual reality-based game with advanced artificial intelligence and large investments. It was because of Warlord that Jae-hyun went from being nothing to someone who is truly respected. And it was within this game that he found what he believed to be his new family, at least until now. Now Jae-hyun thought that it was all unforgivable, so he ran out of the house, thinking he was going to kill them all at that very moment, wondering if those guys were aware of everything he'd had to do to get there. They really thought they could treat him like that, like he was disposable. If he had known that everything would end up like this, he would never have wasted his time helping those people. But as was typical of his luck, he was hit by a truck and probably died right there. And to make matters worse, the person he tried to call didn't pick up. Jae-hyun wondered if, in all possible ways, he had been hit by a garbage truck. He didn't think he could die like this. Not now. Not like this. Those bastards who betrayed him just for money, that bastard who destroyed everything, he wouldn't let it go. He would get his revenge. And sometime later, he was being reconnected to the game. The player, Hokan, had returned to Warlord, and his first challenge was to complete the tutorial, survive against the Minotaur, and get out of the labyrinth. He wondered why he was back at the tutorial and if it really was the Warlord, while other people shouted for the noob to get up before he died. As the Minotaur wasn't happy at all, they said it was impossible to defeat that monster alone, that they needed at least 3 players to face it. Someone asked why Hokan wasn't on the front line, but he just wondered why that Minotaur was still there since it had been removed 5 years ago for being too difficult to kill. Another player replied that the Warlord had only been released 10 months earlier, and Hokan, confused, asked how that was possible. The others found him strange and told him to forget what he was saying and just concentrate on the fight. But Hokan didn't listen and charged at the Minotaur with his sword, leaving everyone shocked by his attitude. They said he was mad that he would die like that because it was impossible to defeat the monster alone. With great skill, Hokan managed to dodge the first blow and made several precise cuts across the Minotaur's body, unleashing rapid and continuous attacks until he killed it with a single final blow. Everyone was surprised, wondering who that player was who had defeated the Minotaur so easily. They tried to approach Hokan, saying that they were skilled players and asking if he wanted to join their guild. But Hokan remembered everything that had happened the last time he had trusted someone and then realized that he had understood something very important. Without hesitation, he killed the two players right there, slitting their necks mercilessly. He realized that if he trusted anyone else in his life, he would deserve to go to hell. The Hokan, known as the Hero Killer, was back. When Jae-hyun logged out of the game, he realized he was inside a capsule, but it wasn't his home capsule. He was in the VGear store, the name of the virtual reality equipment. He remembered that 5 years ago, he didn't have the money to buy his own VGear, so he played the demo of the game in that very store. That could only mean one thing. He really had gone back in time. It was true, then he couldn't waste any more time. He had to take advantage of the knowledge he had of the future. He approached the sales assistant, took out his card, and said he wanted to buy the VGear immediately. The employee started to process the payment, but informed Manhwa that there was insufficient funds. He was confused, but soon remembered that at the time, he didn't have any money because he hadn't started playing Warlord for real yet. He was just a failure. Jae-hyun wondered what he should do now. If he was only gonna save money by playing in the store, it would take too long. It was at that moment that he heard an advertisement on the store's television with a firm voice asking why hesitate, saying that the strong are never afraid of a good challenge and that hesitating was a luxury on the battlefield. It was an advertisement starring Sorey, the Queen of Thunder, made especially for the Warlord. Jae-hyun was completely silent when he saw that Sorey commercial on the big screen, clearly remembering the woman who had called him pathetic trash in his last moments of the game. He thought he wasn't in a position to choose much now. So when he returned home at the end of the day, his VGear was already installed. The technician informed him that everything was ready for use, and he decided to leave right then and there. Jae-hyun thought that the only way he could get money was to use that damn card, remembering the time he borrowed 10 million from an unreliable group known as a Hoda, who had even put a knife between his fingers and made it clear that if he didn't pay, he knew exactly what would happen. Even though he was nervous, Jae-hyun knew that this was his only option. But none of that mattered anymore because even if he had to crawl through hell, he would get his revenge. As he logged onto the game, Jae-hyun thought that he would become stronger and finish off everyone who had betrayed him, and then he finally logged in. The system welcomed the Hakan player back to the world of Warlord, and he thought that it had been a long time since he had last set foot there. It was time to meet someone again, but he had even forgotten her name. Ariadne. That was it. It was then that a woman appeared as if she were a deity, congratulating him on completing the tutorial. Her name was Ariadne, and she was there to guide him through the class selection. She explained that he needed to choose his basic class, and with her golden divine power, she revealed the 3 options available, saying that the skills developed with the basic class would determine his advanced class in the future. The first option was Warrior, the frontline, a fighter specialized in weapons and intense combat, ideal for hand-to-hand battles full of adrenaline. Hakan thought he had been a warrior last time. It was a good choice for leveling up at first, but later in the game, playing alone with this class became increasingly difficult. The second option was the Priest, a support who strengthens allies with blessings and healing abilities. But he immediately rejected this idea, saying that he would never waste his time helping others again. Ariadne then said that there was only one last option left, revealing that perhaps his path was a little darker. A divine power entered his body, and the system confirmed that the basic class had been chosen. He was immediately teleported to the class tower. There, Hokan found himself in front of an immense staircase, at the top of which stood a wizard, a strange-looking guru, who welcomed him enthusiastically. This wizard's name was Golko, and he would be his guide on the path of magic. Golko asked what kind of magic he would like to learn, and Hirakan answered without hesitation that he wanted black magic. There was a moment of silence, and then Golko tried to confirm that he meant the magic of the wilderness, saying that his ears weren't very good. But Hokan clearly repeated that he wanted black magic. Golko became suspicious and asked where he had heard about it, explaining that dark magic was powerful, but it consumed the target's soul. Even so, Hokan said that he knew exactly what he was getting into and that he was fully aware of the choice he was making. He thought that black magic was perfect for his new purpose, and Golko, nervous, could hardly believe it, but decided to go ahead. It was then that Golko ripped open his own face, revealing a skull. In fact, he was a black magician himself. Golko said that it had been a long time since a young man had chosen that path, and if Hirakan was really ready, he should touch the book. But he also warned him that this path would destroy his heart and soul. Hirakan replied that he wanted to start soon, apologized for being in a hurry, but said that his heart was already completely destroyed. Golko let out a long evil laugh, saying that Hokan really was an interesting person. Then the power of dark magic invaded Hokan's body and soul. He remembered a legendary video from his past life where a player with the Necromancer class completed a dungeon alone, leading an army of undead. Hokan thought that it was exactly this kind of power that he needed now, and the system successfully confirmed that he had become a necromancer. At the moment, he was just a novice necromancer and had received the skill called Bone Fragment. Hokan activated the skill and summoned his first bone fragment, a small skull-shaped amulet. When he threw it on the ground, it bounced like a little ball until it hit the ground. The system then announced that a skeletal warrior infused with magic was about to be born. Slowly, the skeleton began to rise, and Hokan thought that this time he would give his all as a necromancer. There, at last, was his first skeleton warrior standing, ready to fight. Hokan commented that it was about time to start and imagined that there must be a dungeon nearby. But when he looked back, he saw that his skeleton's head had fallen to the ground. The two of them were silent, and Hokan wondered what was going on. The next moment, he was transported through a portal and entered the initial training dungeon. He thought that the skeletons from his past life weren't as clumsy as this one. He couldn't understand why the performance was so bad. He then decided to analyze its ability. The bone fragment had an F proficiency, which allowed it to summon just one warrior unit with a basic function to infuse mana into the bones to animate them. Hokan concluded that the problem must be his low proficiency, so he knew he needed to level up quickly. Just then, he heard a roar in the background and thought that this would be the ideal moment to test his skill. A training monster appeared, a coal wolf. Hokan remembered that coal wolves weren't very strong, but they had plenty of speed, which made them perfect for testing combat performance. He then used the bone fragment again and threw a skeleton towards the enemy. This time, the skeleton managed to stay upright, detected the enemies and got into combat position, even intimidating the wolves who hesitated to attack. Hokan ordered the skeleton to kill the enemies and it set off without any fear. After all, it was just a skeleton. To Hokan's surprise, he was doing better than expected, moving quickly and confidently. Hokan thought that perhaps reaching the maximum level wouldn't be so difficult. However, as soon as the skeleton touched the wolves, it was immediately destroyed. The body turned to dust, the skull rolled to Hokan's feet, and the poor skeleton even looked sad. Hokan thought that it couldn't be real, that the skill couldn't be that weak. So he decided to open the more detailed description of the skill, and the system explained that the summoned skeletons used a self-learning system to improve their abilities and that the user needed to do the combat mode, defense, attack, or special action. Hokan realized that he had forgotten to set the skeleton's mode, so he selected defense mode. Meanwhile, the wolves played with the bones of the poor warrior, who finally went into defensive mode, trying to protect himself. Hokan could hardly believe his eyes. He then thought to test the special action mode, and at the same moment, the skeleton began to dance enthusiastically. This caused the wolves to start dancing too. Hokan concluded that now he was really screwed and remembered that, after all, Gokko had warned him. Hokan thought it could only be a nightmare, a horrible situation. He was anxious, shaking all over. And at that moment, he discovered that the character deletion option was unavailable. Newly created accounts couldn't delete characters for 3 months, and that's when he realized how big a mess he was in. He couldn't delete the account. He couldn't change class and he still had to pay the loan shark and the rent. He thought that maybe being hit by another truck would solve everything. He wondered why so many things went wrong on his path. Every time he thought he was making progress, everything would fall apart and he'd be back to square one. And on top of that, he had to deal with that useless skeleton next to him, who was now punching the air pretending to be doing something useful. Hokan asked the skeleton to stop doing that because it was only making the situation worse. He wondered how the necromancer from his past life could control so many skeletons at the same time. It was then that he remembered what the skill description said. Skeletons could improve over time because they had a learning system and he himself knew how to fight. What if the skeleton was watching and learning? After all, it had seen the moment when Hokan defeated the coal wolves, so maybe it could evolve from that. Determined to test this theory, Hokan took a stick and placed it in the little skeleton's hand, saying that the skeleton was lucky to have a master like him. Even if he didn't look it, he had already been called a genius at the game. He was responsible for training an entire guild, and if there was one thing the skeleton needed to learn, it was combat. He said that if he didn't dodge, he would dodge. So he went for him and threw a punch, knocking the skeleton down with one blow. They repeated this process countless times. The skeleton kept getting hit, but over time, the blows began to hurt less. Hokan explained that he shouldn't stay on the ground every time he was hit, that he needed to dodge first and counterattack later. He said that any opening should be taken without hesitation. Soon, the skeleton showed a determined look as if it was finally ready for a real fight, and so he set off once again to attack the coal wolves. With agility, he dodged the first blow and counterattacked straight into the neck of one of the wolves, then hit the stomach of the other. Alone, the little skeleton managed to defeat both enemies. After that, he looked at his master with pride, hoping to receive a compliment. But Hokan, maintaining his stern pose, asked why he was looking that way, saying that he couldn't be distracted during a fight. Even so, he admitted that the skeleton's movements weren't bad. At that moment, the proficiency of the bone fragment skill increased by 3 levels, and Hokan Salim also leveled up. He recognized that his skeleton had done a great job. Later, Hokan and he arrived at the player's starting village, Figure's Castle. The streets were bustling with people offering guilds and looking for companions for raids and bosses. Hokan thought that his little skeleton was learning fast. Before long, he would probably be able to clear dungeons on his own. Now the main goal was to reach level 10 as quickly as possible. While walking through the streets of Figas, he bumped into someone and ended up being pulled back. A chubby boy asked him if he had no manners, saying that when you bump into someone, you should apologize. Hokan just looked at him and wondered who those fifth-rate villains were, completely ignoring what they were saying. He thought he didn't have time for this kind of problem. The fat man insisted, asked him if he was listening, and came at him with a punch. However, Hokan was protected by another player, a big guy with sunglasses and blonde hair. The blonde man told the fat man that he couldn't go around punching people in the middle of the street like that. The fat man, irritated, asked who the hell he was and if he happened to be with Hokan. The man said not exactly, but Hokan recognized him instantly. That super muscular physique, those flowery and weird clothes typical of the Hawaiian style, left no doubt. This was Matador Chev, the best warrior player of his past life. Hokan was surprised and wondered what he was doing there at such an early stage of the game. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by a disgusting spitting noise that came straight from the fat man. He told the old man to get out of the way if he didn't know what was going on and accused Hokan of hitting him first, saying he'd never heard of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Chev then activated his intimidation skill, releasing an aura so strong that it was like a gale blowing over everyone in the square. The players around were dazzled by this immense presence. He said that if he was going to give it back, then the fat man should punch him in the palm since the previous blow had hit him there. It was only fair, he thought. One of the fat man's subordinates recognized Chev at that moment and panicked. He said that this was Killer Chev, leader of the Red Bulls Guild, one of the 30 best in the game. He was known as a combat maniac, practically a killer on the battlefield. The fat man, now terrified, wondered what someone like him was doing in that place. Chev appeared smiling right behind him and asked what the answer was. The fat man was speechless, trembled with fear, and ran off while apologizing repeatedly. Chev then said that he was glad everything had been resolved peacefully while the people around him wondered if this was really what he called peaceful. Soon afterwards, Chev asked if Hokan was all right and told him not to bother with those kind of people. But Hokan simply turned away and replied that next time he didn't want any help. The atmosphere became uncomfortable. Chev himself scowled at the coldness of that answer and commented that it hurt. In fact, Hokan left there furious. He felt that he had been completely suppressed by Chev's power and he hated feeling weak. He swore to himself that the next time he met him, he wouldn't be the same man. He would become someone stronger. Later, inside a dungeon that looked like an old mining cave, Hokan was still thinking about it. The difference in strength between him and Chev was absurd, and remembering that in their past lives, they were on the same level only made him more determined. He had to overcome Chev if he wanted to achieve his revenge. As he reflected, a cold tiger advanced against him, but he wasn't worried in the slightest. His little skeleton, now much better trained, acted on its own, interrupting the creature's attack and unleashing a sequence of blows, defeating the tiger with ease. The system confirmed that Hokan had leveled up once again. The skeleton celebrated, happy with his master and proud of the results. Hokan thought that taking 3 days to reach level 10 had taken longer than he had expected. His skeleton looked a little disappointed, but the system informed him that he had finally reached level 10. With that, he could no longer access the dungeon training area. The beginner's mark was removed and the game started processing his rewards. He received the war clock, an essential device for any player. This clock displayed the status, missions, map, inventory, and even messages received in the world of Warlord. He thought it had been a while since he had used it, so he decided to open up his stats. Hokan was currently level 10 with the Necromancer class. He had a title and his attributes were 3 strength, 3 stamina, 5 intelligence, and 5 magic. He thought that was awful, but now he had 50 points to distribute. Hokan knew that the first distribution of status was extremely important, and he had to be very careful. As a necromancer, the most obvious choice would have been to invest in intelligence and magic, but he still decided to put all the points into strength, leaving him with 53 strength points in total. Now he believed he could crush anything that came along. The skeleton next to him saw that choice and was completely horrified. It looked very disappointed. Hokan realized this and, in response, gave the skeleton a kick so hard that it tore its skull off. But he didn't give up on being a necromancer. He was only doing it to teach it. Increasing magic and intelligence at that point wouldn't have much impact, but investing in strength would allow him to teach it his moves as effectively as possible. He was literally betting his life on his skeleton learning. He even got emotional about it. Hakin believed that the skeleton should worry about training while he took care of the rest. Besides, he knew that the system wasn't the only way to increase status. Later, he went to the Monster Hunting Association in the Figures Castle branch. When he entered, they were presenting a new mission to the group, and the people started pushing each other and fighting to get the mission. They were almost killing each other for it. Hakin found this strange as the missions at this time of year were usually pretty bad, but the people seemed very motivated. They were probably newcomers. He went to reception and asked to see the list of available missions. The receptionist explained, yeah, he could choose any of the ones on the table, but warned him that the ones there were the ones nobody wanted, usually because they were difficult to complete or had very low rewards. He also commented that Hirakin was brave to be trying to get one of those. Hirakin knew it was true. Most of them did look awful, but he knew how to choose, and he soon found the perfect mission. It was called Beamer Mountain Cave with a reward of just 10 gold coins and consisted of hunting very low-level monsters. The receptionist even asked him if he really wanted that quest since the reward was only 10 gold, but Hirakin thought it was perfect for him. From the outside, it really did look like a bad mission. But if he completed it before reaching level 15, he could get an ultra-rare title called Ascending Star. This title was special because it increased stats by a percentage, unlike most, which only increased by 1 or 2 fixed points. The Rising Star improved attributes based on what the character already had, meaning that the more attributes he had, the greater the bonus. This would be Hirakin's first step towards becoming a completely broken character in the game. So Hirakin got ready to pick up his new equipment, and later, he was on Beamer Mountain ready to start, looking determined but wearing extremely ridiculous clown outfit. Even the crows attacked him as if he were a scarecrow. He thought it looked awful because he had spent all his money on the skeleton outfit, and when he went to buy something for himself, he ended up looking like a complete weirdo. Even so, he knew there was no point regretting it. He was going to do a speed run of this mission and, with the money he got, buy some real clothes. With that thought in mind, he took off running down the mountain in his gaudy clown clothes. Meanwhile, in the middle of the woods, a person asked for help but was pulled out and killed by player killers. Later, a new player finally arrived at Beamer Mountain. It was there that the adventures of the mighty Multi would begin. He seemed to be a very talented player. He was already level 11 and said he would soon be in the world rankings. During his walk, he came across someone asking for help because his friend had fallen. Help because his Multi, full of goodwill, ran over to help. The supposed priest explained that the monster had appeared out of nowhere and attacked them and that they were now out of potions to cure it. Multi said he had some healing potions and offered to help. The priest thanked him several times, saying that he had arrived at the right time. However, Multi was attacked from behind without realizing it and fell with just one blow. The priest thanked him again, saying that he would make good use of his items. Multi, surprised, asked if they were deceiving people. The priest replied that they couldn't be blamed for that since it was the player himself who had fallen straight into the trap. Multi was setting up his war watch, but the other said he was a real noob. He got scared, and the priest warned his companions that it was time to look for the next idiot. This group was known as the Ralph family, an infamous gang that hunted down and killed players. Later, Hirakin, now equipped with his skeleton, faced a new type of wolf, this time with a wooden appearance. He activated the attack mode of the skeleton, which became furious and ran at such an absurd speed that in the next second, it had already eliminated the wolves. For defeating the 3 elder wolves, Hirakin gained 375, 366, and 379 experience respectively. He thought that now, with the skeleton using a real sword, he could deal with many monsters on his own. He felt he had made the right decision in prioritizing the skeleton's equipment since real gamers didn't care about looks. Even so, he recognized that he looked very, very ugly. The skeleton looking at him seemed to feel sorry for him, and Hirakin realized it. He thought it was time to move on. He needed money to get rid of that horrible, pitiful, and tragic outfit. But just then, the skeleton was hit on the head by an arrow, something even Hirakin hadn't expected. A person approached apologizing, saying that he thought it was a monster, but it was just another Ralph family disguise, pretending once again to be innocent. The priest repeated his apology, but Hirakin Neju quickly noticed the war watches and the blood-stained weapons. He understood that they were player killers, the famous PKs. Hirakin replied that everything was fine and said that he would love to receive a mana potion if that wasn't a problem. The priest replied that, unfortunately, they were also out of potions, but that they could help him level up since when you level up, mana recovers automatically. Hirakin thought that if that were true, it sounded like a really good idea. The priest said that, yes, it was their fault, so they wouldn't mind helping. He explained that some monsters had appeared and that the time was right as they could just damage the enemies and leave it to Hirakin to finish them off, making it easier for him to evolve. But as they prepared, the priest asked if everyone remembered the real plan. First, they would attract all the monsters, then cast a spell to strengthen them, and finally, push one of the monsters onto their chosen target. Of course, in the panic, it would quickly die. But when they put the plan into practice, Hokan killed the wolf as if it were nothing. He looked at the Ralph family and commented that they were good, and this left the group confused. They began to wonder how that summon was so strong and thought that perhaps Hokan's level was much higher than they had imagined. So this time, they threw several wolves at him at once. One of the gang members, who was wearing a heavy mask, rushed to attack Hokan from behind, but he dodged easily, leaving the player completely shocked. He hadn't expected a summoner to be so fast, but Hokan, with a single blow, cut through the mass and knocked the player to the ground, eliminating that criminal without hesitation. Hokan then ordered his skeleton to take care of the other two. The skeleton was furious and ran with its master towards the Ralph family. The priest still tried to talk, but the two were quickly eliminated by the skeleton and Hokan, the famous hero killer. Hokan thought he knew this type of person very well, people who gained the trust of others only to stab them in the back in the dirtiest and most pathetic way possible. The old Hokan would have fallen into this kind of trap, but the Hokan of today was different. The priest, seeing the situation, tried to ask for a moment to negotiate. He said they could take his items, but they didn't have to kill him. But Hokan no longer believed in promises. For him, it was already too late, so he finished the job and killed them both. Ralph was defeated and, 8 war watches, which clearly didn't belong to him, were left on the ground. Huracan commented that the guy had quite a lot and decided to keep it all for himself. He could take advantage of this situation. He also picked up some decorative clothes. Meanwhile, the skeleton was still stepping on the fallen player, or maybe he wasn't completely dead. In any case, it seemed to be making him suffer, and he still seemed quite happy about it. Hokan wondered what was wrong with the skeleton and if it also wanted to get some items for itself. Later, Hokan healed his skeleton using the power of necromancy, and now his companion was much better equipped. The skeleton even resembled that of another famous work that Thaya had already shown in its entirety on the channel, the 10-hour-long one. Perhaps it had even been inspired by it. Hakin commented that he seemed very happy, farty, with his new equipment and that in the end, appearances didn't matter in the game. It was what was inside that really counted. But now, he was looking pretty stylish too. The skeleton looked at him with an expression of doubt as if it didn't believe anything he said. Hakin was pleased with the war watches. It was explained that when you sell another player's watch, the items in their inventory are transformed and drop random rewards. Then he got rare equipment with bonus statuses, such as the Black Goblin Pants that gave an extra 5 points in magic and intelligence, the Sword of the Ancient Essence that gave an extra 10 points in magic and a skill book of the Demonic Curse, as well as a large amount of gold, something that even seemed like winning the lottery. Thanks to those naive players, he got all this faster than he expected. After that, he took out a mask from his inventory. Huracan thought that he would soon start recording his gameplay, and that was why masks of this kind were necessary until he remembered someone saying that this kind of thing needed to be stylish. Hakin believed that the guild needed to have an identity. It needed a face, and that was why it was called Heiho Masks. He thought that people would like that identity, which is why the guild was given that name. Hakin even thought about changing his style completely, but ended up going back to the old mask. He changed it into something darker and decided that he would never again let anyone steal what was his. He was determined to prove that he had always been right, and he was gonna do it from the start. After equipping himself with his mask, he set off together with his little summoned skeleton. Later, in the mountains and peaks, they were entering the next dungeon known as Bima Mountain Cave. Harkin remembered that if his memory was correct, blue werewolves appeared in this dungeon. Although they were stronger monsters, with his new equipment, it should be easy. He thought he could finish it in 10 minutes and set off with great enthusiasm and determination. However, a few hours later, he was completely frustrated because no monster had appeared. He commented that if someone had cleared the dungeon recently, the system would have sent a notification. They began to wonder if it was a bug or a glitch in the game. Meanwhile, Hokan's skeleton was attacking a specific point on the wall. It was as if he had found something hidden. In the wall, there was a large portal, a kind of secret passage. They had discovered a secret dungeon, a new stage, and the option arose to enter it. Hokan then understood why there were no monsters appearing in the main dungeon. It was explained that instance dungeons are unique, randomly generated areas within another dungeon, and that when they appear, the original dungeon is considered cleared. These instances are much more difficult to complete, but offer much greater rewards than ordinary dungeons. Harkin thought that this could be a great opportunity, but the problem was that once inside the instance, he couldn't leave until he had completed everything or died. Logically, the safest course would be to retreat. If he died there, he wouldn't be able to play for 2 whole days, which would be a huge waste of time. Even so, he decided to go in. He thought that if he didn't die, everything would be alright. As soon as he entered, he was blinded by a bright light. In fact, he was now in an open space inside a destroyed coliseum that resembled an arena. Hakin felt the atmosphere of the place was heavy and wondered what kind of monster would appear there. Just then, he heard heavy footsteps echoing around him. Then a blue werewolf appeared, but it didn't look normal. The system couldn't even identify the creature's level because it was a corrupted werewolf. Hirakan hadn't expected that and wondered why there would be a corrupted monster in that dungeon. Before he could react, he was hit hard and thrown away, crashing violently into the wall. Seeing this, his skeleton armed itself, ready for combat. But Hirakan chuckled and thought that his luck was pretty good that day since facing a corrupted monster probably meant that he was dealing with the main material of some important mission. He commented to his skeleton that if they didn't defeat this creature, they would have to say goodbye to dinner that night. With that, he set off boldly and the little skeleton prepared a coordinated attack, placing his sword at his master's feet to propel him into the air. Hakan leapt with force, preparing an aerial attack. The corrupted werewolf saw this as a chance to hit his enemy from the air, but Hakan activated his curse, imbuing his sword with the power of the demonic curse. The werewolf was definitely not expecting this because with just one blow, his arm was completely torn off as if it had been cut by a hot blade passing through butter. The creature screamed in pain, and soon afterwards, the demonic curse was activated on his body, causing all his statuses to be reduced by 10%. Hakan recognized that this ability was really useful, but the werewolf recovered too quickly, became even more enraged, and even looked bigger. To make matters worse, the arm that had been cut off regenerated as if nothing had happened. This only served to make him even more dangerous. In short, the system announced that the corrupted werewolf had entered a state of brutal rage, becoming completely insane and nullifying all the negative effects applied to him. Hakan had expected this boss to be difficult to deal with, and even though he wanted to save his resources for later, he saw this as a chance to test something important. He then activated the special slot on his war watch, releasing the sealed power, and a dark cloak enveloped his entire body. When the mist dissipated, Hirakan was in a completely different outfit, wearing armor made of darkness. It was explained that inventory activation was one of the unique features of the Warlord game, and that when a player used it, it was as if they were channeling the pure energy of the game world to increase their stats and reshape their body, activating a second unpredictable form, something players called frenzy mode. Hakin called the werewolf to fight and was clearly ready for combat. The creature's claws almost hit him, and if they had, they would have done a lot of damage. But since they didn't, Hakan managed to dodge all the next attacks. Even so, he found no opening, no clear chance to counterattack. The werewolf left him no room to breathe. Hakan realized that he was facing an incredibly fast, strong, and dangerous boss, and any attack could bring him down. When the werewolf lunged forward, Hakan remembered that he still had a card up his sleeve. The power of frenzy mode multiplied his attributes several times over. So without hesitation, he executed a powerful slash that pierced the werewolf from the chest to the back. He thought that this would finally make the fight fun, but perhaps he had gotten too carried away because he was almost grabbed by the creature. He narrowly managed to escape and remembered that the enemy was still in a state of maximum fury. The next second, the werewolf appeared behind him, ready to catch him. But Hakan knew he was forgetting something important. The little skeleton was still there, and with a sharp attack, he cut off the creature's arm again. Hakan then gave the signal for them to use the combination move they had practiced earlier, and the skeleton nodded in agreement. The werewolf was completely confused by the situation, and at that moment, received the joint attack of the two being cut into several pieces. The system announced that the corrupted werewolf had been eliminated and that frenzy mode had been deactivated. Hakan thought that for the first time in a long time, that really wasn't so bad. When he left the dungeon and completed the mission that was recorded on the card, he received his reward of 10 gold coins, which turned into a golden card. And because his skeleton warrior was responsible for defeating a high-level creature, the bone fragment evolved from rank F to rank E. In addition, Hakan received another 20,000 gold and collected the werewolf's skin and bones as part of the reward. The little skeleton was so happy celebrating his victory that he even seemed to be dancing, while Hirakan was thinking that instant dungeons really were very good. In addition to the normal rewards, he had obtained a rare item called the Corruption Tracker Necklace, which increased any status related to his class, offering an extra 18 points in all attributes. It was an exclusive item that could not be exchanged with any other player, and in order to use it, you had to have the title of Corruption Tracker. Hakan wondered if it was a unique item. Even without being able to sell it, it was clearly far superior to any common item. It was then that he realized what it really meant to be a corruption tracker. He had acquired 3 new titles. The first was Rising Star, which increased his intelligence and magic by 3%. The second was Challenger of Heroes, which granted 3 points of stamina, but which seemed to be a much more modest bonus. And finally, the title Corruption Tracker, which still had no description in the system, but Hakan already had an idea of what it was. It was the introductory title for the first chapter of the Warlord game's main story mission, a narrative line considered to be the backbone of the game's universe and which did determine the course of important events within that world. That's why the rewards for this mission were absurdly good. Every player dreamed of taking part in this quest line. No matter how hard they had to work, it was the most important and desired content in Warlord. Hakan thought that in his past life, he had barely made it to Chapter 4 of this mission. And now there he was, entering from the start with a huge advantage. It was as if he had won the lottery 5 times in a row. Excited by his unexpected progress, he decided to log out of the game to celebrate. Later at home, he was watching the announcement video of the Hydra Guild, which had just reached the final stage of the corruption scene. They promised to clean it all up in just 3 months. Watching the video, Jae-hyun was disgusted, muttering that it wasn't luck at all, but pure manipulation. The Hydra Guild was already in its final phase, and he believed that there was nothing more that could be achieved there. He was so close, but now he thought he might have to skip this part and jump straight to the next chapter. But then he had an idea. Perhaps this was the perfect opportunity. The entire world of Warlord was focused on the corruption phase, and this was the first major mission to be completed on the entire server. If he uploaded a video showing Secret Dungeon and the battle against the corrupted werewolf, that content could become a super viral video. He could already imagine the dollars pouring into his account one after the other. It was a good thing he had recorded it all. Now he just needed to edit it quickly, make a few cuts, publish it. But for that, he thought of a specific person, someone with the talent to turn that material into something legendary. The legendary editor from his past life, who at that moment was nonchalantly eating noodles. It was the filmmaker, Romini. When Romini received the request, she was a little surprised. She hadn't expected someone of a high level to send something directly to her. When she saw the name, Hakan, and read that it was a level 15 dungeon, she thought that it was probably the beginner's cave, imagining that it was just another noob trying to make a viral video. But as soon as she opened the content of the video and understood what it was about, she was so shocked that she even knocked over the chair she was sitting on. Romani immediately realized that this player would be the perfect model for her videos. Later in the evening, while this was going on, a very wealthy woman had summoned one of her subordinates to an urgent meeting. She commented that a new video about the corruption phase had just been posted and said it was interesting because it showed a level 15 player defeating a corrupted werewolf single-handedly. The subordinate informed her that her team had already reviewed the video and believed that the werewolf was probably low level. But the woman ignored this analysis and said that she really liked the player and wanted to hire him immediately. In real life, that woman was Chai Seol-yun, the CEO of Lightning Enterprises, the world's #1 business conglomerate. In-game, she was known as the Queen of Thunder, Surumai, one of the most influential figures on the entire server. Meanwhile, Hakan was completely shocked. Gamus, looking at the numbers for his video, it had only been a few hours since he posted it, and it had already exceeded 6,000 views. He thought that things were really working out. In his previous life, it had taken him months to achieve this kind of reach. He soon noticed another difference from what he remembered. Romani, as well as having done the impeccable editing of the video, was also starting to contact him more often. Hakin used to think that Romani was someone unreachable, but apparently, in this new life, she was getting closer and closer. She asked if he had seen the number of views, and he confirmed that he had. Romani replied that it was her job, but she didn't stop praising him, saying that the material he had sent was premium and even sent him a flower picture as a joke. Hakin thought for a second about blocking her, but knew she would be very useful. Romani then asked when the next video would be, and Hakin replied that that was an excellent question since he himself had no idea what he would record next. It was practically impossible that another corrupted boss would appear out of nowhere in his path just because. Even so, he clicked on the button to log back into the game and thought that, for the time being at least, everything was going as expected. So he logged back into Warlord. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the game, Head Matador was watching Hakan's video. He admitted that the boy's moves were excellent, but there was something strange, something familiar. He began to wonder if he had ever met that player before. Just then, someone appeared and asked who he was talking about. It was Yell, also from the Red Bulls Guild. Chev replied that he was talking about that player everyone had been talking about lately, Hakan the Mask. Yell insisted on knowing why he was so focused on that video, saying that lately, the boss only watched this guy's recordings as if he were obsessed. Even so, Chev said that the new players emerging made him increasingly cautious, but that particular player, was really exceptional. He commented that Hakan used to summon skeleton and that he was on a completely different level from any other necromancer. He also said that the boy fought with great skill and wondered if he would accept a duel. Yell interrupted by saying that that was enough and that if he had time to spend on such things, he should hurry up with the tasks he needed to do because he was going live in 5 minutes. The boss asked if it was time, and she said yes, reminding him that he owed her. Yell then said that if he was really that grateful, he just needed to make sure that the live broadcast that night was a good one because 200,000 people had bought tickets just to watch Matadorchev, the leader of the Red Bulls and currently ranked 9th in the world. Meanwhile, the dungeon portal was forming right in front of him, and he had already activated his frenzy form, ready to end it all brutally. He called all his units together and ordered them to prepare for combat. Later, at the Monster Hunting Association in the branch located in Figure's Castle, Khan complained that there were no interesting quests. There wasn't a single quest that was any good, and he blamed that damn startup village for it. He even thought about giving up the idea of creating videos for a while. But then the counter-attendant turned to him and asked, with a curious look, if he was the guy who had cleared Beamer Mountain. Khan realized that it was the same guy as before. He introduced himself as Hotan and asked if Khan had some time to talk. So later, in a slightly more private office, Hutan told him that he had heard that he had seen a corrupted monster in the cave of Beamer Mountain, and Khan wondered if there had really been an event like that in the game until he remembered and confirmed that, yes, he had seen a werewolf with strange eyes. Hutan said that he already suspected this and explained that what Khan found was a creature exposed to the power of the corrupted. He said that no one knows exactly who the corrupted is, but the power of this entity transforms and modifies monsters, making them more brutal and evil. The damage caused by it in this world is enormous, which is why the Monster Hunting Association has placed a very high reward. Hakin then excitedly grabbed his arm and said that he would be happy to risk his life to bring down this evil being. He thought at the time that this was a hidden mission, and he became even more excited when Hakan explained that the boy would be facing a very powerful and corrupted being. Even so, Khan replied that it was fine. He was willing to face anything. Hutan said he wasn't ready for that, but Khan thanked him for the opportunity. As he insisted, Hutan said he would give it a chance and explained that there is a man called a Himbri in Bun's castle, which is to the east of Figure's castle, and that this man could teach Khan a thing or two. He would also write a letter of recommendation. Khan was very shocked, but he accepted the secret mission called a Himbri's teachings, where he would have to find a Himbri and deliver the letter written by Hotan, and as a reward, he would win a skill book. He began to shake with excitement and shouted with happiness, thinking that now the game was really beginning. In his mind, it seemed to be a mission to become a disciple of a Himbri, who was one of the 7 disciples of the great mage Boken, and the NPC a Himbri possessed the rarest skill books in the game, books that any mage and warlord would kill to get, and almost no one had that chance in their past life. Hakan thought that perhaps he had gotten it because of his Rising Star title and also because of the main mission involving the corrupted. Excited, he prepared to run like there was no tomorrow. But he almost forgot one important thing. There was something he needed to sort out before he set off. So later, he went to a forest where the leaves were falling, and in a clearing, he used the bone fragment, throwing that little skull on the ground and summoning his little skeleton. Hirakan realized that he still hadn't properly analyzed the items he had picked up the day before, and now he could finally use the werewolf skull. The system then asked him if he would like to transform the werewolf skull into a skeleton warrior. Hakin confirmed that, yes, absolutely, he wanted to use the werewolf skull, so the creature's traces entered his little skeleton, increasing its durability by 2 points. In addition, Khan also had a corruption tracker necklace, which he equipped immediately, and this necklace increased all his statuses by 18 points and also improved his class abilities. Now that this preparation was done, he felt more powerful. He then used 2 more bone fragments, summoning 2 small skulls that turned into 2 more skeletal companions. The first skeleton was very confused by this as he now had brothers, and Khan warned him that from now on, all fights would be in groups of 3 and that they needed to become friends. The little skeleton seemed desperate at this idea, but Khan wasn't worried at all and was already thinking about what kind of monster would be born in that area. Later, everyone was facing a level 25 forest bear. A single blow from him was enough to destroy a tree with great ease. It seemed to be made of grass-covered earth, so tough was it. Hirakan managed to dodge the first claw, and although he looked frightened by the second blow, he was actually just drawing the monster's attention so that his soldiers could take action. The first skeleton ran up with his sword, but had his head grabbed and was thrown away like a piece of garbage. Hakan was indignant, wondering if he had really fallen for such an obvious blow, and complained that they always had to attack from the enemy's blind spot. The second skeleton also went for the attack with a little more courage and hope, but was also slapped away without doing any damage. Khan became increasingly irritated by the situation, reinforcing that he was supposed to attack from the blind. Meanwhile, the bear was just watching everything calmly without attacking her, as if waiting for the next mistake. Khan became even more frustrated, realizing that even after seeing the other being crushed, the second skeleton acted in exactly the same way. He thought that this kind of training was getting him nowhere. Then came the last hope. The strongest skeleton, the armored one, sprang into action, and Khan was impressed by his courage. He lunged forward with his blade ready, but when he got close, he was slapped so hard that his skull was blown off. Hakan concluded that, no, he wasn't the last hope either, and that they were all idiots. Later, the three skeletons were gathered together being scolded. They were visibly nervous, and Hakan asked them if they had brains, even though he knew they obviously didn't, but he still questioned it. He explained that when a monster is attacked, it turns against the attacker, so there will always be a blind spot available, which means they only need to attack from the blind spot. Even so, the little skeletons were confused and didn't quite understand. Hakan wondered why he was still wasting time explaining these things. He even thought things were going well as his ability had risen in rank, and thanks to the effect of the necklace, he could now summon 3 skeletons. However, it was no use as the 3 of them were still weak and lacked any team coordination. Even if the first one had learned something on his own, the 3 of them didn't seem to work together at all. He realized that he was spending triple his mana and getting even worse results. Hakan was so frustrated that he thought about dropping everything. But at least he recognized that he had reached level 20 and that, for the time being, his next videos wouldn't be focused on combat. Finally, he told everyone to get up because today had been enough training, and now they were ready to head towards Banksa Castle, where they would arrive shortly. And Hakan thought that now that he had become a necromancer, his summons would do all the work for him so he could just sit back and relax while the undead took care of everything. But he soon realized that things seemed even worse than before, as if fate was always against him. So he continued walking through the forest until he reached the Monster Hunting Association in the Banksa Castle branch. And even though it wasn't the original village, the place was pretty full, with players and NPCs everywhere, all very busy. Suddenly, the players began to get agitated because they couldn't find a specific person. They were commenting loudly and searching desperately, wanting to know which mission this person had taken, asking each other where he was and shouting for someone to capture him. And Hakan observed this with contempt, thinking that these people looked like a pack of hyenas. There were always these types everywhere who, instead of focusing on their own missions and progress, preferred to follow what others were doing as if they were parasites trying to suck up other people's efforts. It was then that a bald man approached and asked if he had any good missions that they could do as a group. But Hakan rudely told him to go away as he knew he couldn't let anyone find out that he was on a Himbra secret mission. So he went upstairs and handed his letter of recommendation to the NPC at the entrance. As the letter was from Hotan, he was allowed to enter immediately, which caused quite a commotion among the other players, who were outraged at not being able to do the same. Many also wanting to pass through that barrier. But Hakan was already excited about what a Himbri could teach him, as it was secret mission and should contain some very valuable reward. Besides, it seemed that his connections were finally paying off. When he entered the room, he was quite surprised as the place was a real mess with piles of books thrown all over the place as if it were an abandoned warehouse. And soon, he heard a voice asking who was there because there were no appointments scheduled for today. It was a Himbri himself who looked completely exhausted with deep circles under his eyes, books piled on his feet, head, and arms, which made Hakan wonder if he had always been like that. He then introduced himself as Hakan, saying that he had been sent there by Lord Hotan, and Umbra commented that he was a black magician in training and that he seemed to have good potential. And Hakan, even though he didn't care, thanked Hotan for the recognition, but made it clear that he was only interested in his reward. The Ahimbri then handed over 2 very rare books as payment, one teaching the skill of bone armor and the other the skill of the helmet of madness. And Hakan was completely surprised as they were incredibly rare and valuable items. Yet he thanked him very much for the reward, and the Ahimbri only replied that with that, his negotiation was concluded, wishing him a good journey before ending the mission. But Hakan wasn't satisfied as he had hoped there would be more content linked to that mission. So even though the mission was officially over, he tried to insist, calling the master and asking for another chance as he wanted to learn even more skills and was willing to do anything for it. Then Ahimbra grabbed his hands and asked if it was true that he would do anything, and he seemed to like this promise very much. Because soon afterwards, he handed Hakan a new mission called Find the Egg in the Nest. Only this mission had no visible reward, and Hakan wondered if he had just been tricked. Meanwhile in the city, a knight in impressive armor drew everyone's attention because of the magnificent equipment he wore. And then he started walking towards a large tower in the center of the city, saying that this was the right place, the place where the Ho-Ho mask lived. Hakan, on the other hand, was still confused and angry, thinking that he had really been tricked by an NPC because he thought he would get a reward for the mission. But all he got was another mission with no reward at all, wondering if it was really worth continuing with it. The moment he commented on the mission, a group of players around him noticed and immediately threw themselves at him, saying that he had received a mission, trying to get any information out of him. And Hakan remembered that he had forgotten how annoying and invasive these players could be, so he wondered if it wouldn't be easier just to eliminate them all right there. But before he could react, someone appeared and took everyone off him and saved him. This mysterious knight asked for a moment to talk to Hokan in a quieter place, and Hokan became suspicious, wondering who this guy was. But when the man called him Heiho Mask, he decided to go along. Later, in a quiet alley, the knight apologized for the commotion and explained that he just wanted to talk to Hokan. But with so many people around, it would be impossible. Hokan noticed that from the level of the equipment, he must have been of high rank, but he still couldn't remember anyone like that from his past life. So he began to wonder if that guy knew him. The knight, who was wearing glasses, asked if he was the Heiho, and Hokan thought the best strategy at that moment was to pretend he didn't know anything. So he answered as if he had never heard of the name. The knight then asked if he had received a mission from an NPC called a Himbri, and Hokan became even more suspicious, wondering if he should share any information just because this guy seemed to know too much, and concluded that if the guy wanted to fight, it was better to put his own account at risk because he wasn't gonna give in easily. So Hokan gave the knight the middle finger and decided that this was the best strategy, to continue denying everything and pretending that he was just an unimportant idiot just to see what he would do next. What the knight did was reach out and apologize, but Hokan just called him a coward and said he'd let it pass this time. Even though he wondered who this guy thought he was since he clearly wasn't alone and it all seemed part of a plan. The knight then commented that Hokan was definitely not a professional and while wiping his hand in disgust, said that if he was really experienced, he wouldn't have left his left hand where he wore a war watch so unprotected. In the shadows, someone else was watching everything, wondering if he should still keep an eye on a Himbri since the corruption mission was almost complete. And if anyone noticed now, there would be no hiding it. The knight answered no because the real main mission was precisely that of the egg in the nest and said it was better to reduce the number of variables. The person in the shadows then returned to his position, and the knight also left. Meanwhile, Hokan was watching everything from the window, wondering who that other person involved was and concluded that since they were moving around together, they were probably part of an organization. But if they were from an ordinary guild, they would never have revealed their identities like that, trying to make some kind of deal with him. He also realized that the way the knight used his left hand with the war watch indicated that they were definitely not novices. And so he wondered once again who the hell those guys were. Later, while training his skeletons, Hokan was sure that there was something special about that egg in the nest mission and concluded that they had probably seen the video he posted because the name of his channel was Ho, and that's why they came after him. But even so, considering that they had let him go, it seemed that their target wasn't exactly him, or at least not yet. And, yes, it was about the mission he had received. Hokan thought that he had no idea what was going on, but if he continued with that mission, he would surely run into those guys again. In order not to be traced, he would have to stop posting videos for the time being. He wondered why there were always psychopaths getting involved in his life. Meanwhile, Chai, or rather Storm Queen Shur, was awakening from her capsule. Her secretary Park Seji appeared saying that she had done a great job. Seji offered her a glass of water while asking how the test for new members had gone. Chai replied that it was complete garbage. She wondered why no one was remotely useful to her and wanted to know if there had been any news of Raho recently. Seji commented that he still hadn't heard back from the guy who posted the video and that perhaps he had even joined another guild. Che asked if it really was another guild, and Suji replied that he would check again. Che asked for the information to be delivered as soon as possible and also asked about the director. Suji said that there was no word from him either. Che commented that the warlord was getting powerful and that was why he was quiet. She recalled that when he first said he wanted to play these games, he tried to call off the wedding. Suji was impressed by Che's big body. Before leaving the room, Che told her to make a new selection of candidates and to submit the report by the next day. Suji asked in surprise if it was until tomorrow, but Che just slammed the door in her face. Suji wondered about her boss's difficult temperament. Meanwhile, Hirakin was in a place he hadn't visited for some time, the Lizard Swamp. He thought that as a Himbri was staying at Ban's castle, the mission area would surely be near there based on the word egg. He considered that the mission could be related to oviparous monsters, such as those of the bird, reptile, or insect type, and the place that matched all this was precisely the Lizard Swamp. He decided to look there first. If he didn't find anything, he would go elsewhere. Huracan summoned his little skeleton to test something. As this was a high-level hunting ground, he thought he should put an enchantment on the summon. He used the skill Elmo of Madness, which marked the skeleton's head with a symbol. This symbol activated the spell, and there was a random chance that the creature would lose its sanity. When he activated the helmet, the little skeleton became extremely tuned, gained horns and a red energy, looking much stronger and more insane. Harkin told himself that the test would start now, but he didn't pay attention to the part that said the skeleton could completely lose control. The test consisted of attacking the master himself. So the little skeleton lunged at Hirkan as if to kill him, but he hit back with a punch so hard that it took the summoner's head off. He became angry, wondering how that summon dared to attack him and if it was some kind of bug or if he had been tricked once again. Suddenly, a level 30 lizard man appeared behind him. Liz Hirkin thought that the guinea pigs had arrived at the right time. He activated the Helmet of Madness on all his summons. All the skeletons had their attributes increased and received armor made of bones. Now they were ready to face the lizard men. They advanced totally insane, and the monsters were no match for them. The lizard men were broken in half with ease, and at that moment, Hirkin received 864 experience. Hirkin thought those incantations were great and decided that next week, they would keep doing it again and again until they found that damned egg. He thought that if he wasn't in that region, they would move on to the next one without hesitation. But before he knew it, someone was watching him with great interest. That person was Ilya, a woman known for her stunning beauty. She knew this and had no problem admitting it because it was the truth. Everyone around her adored her. Many even offered her gifts just for her looks. Because of this, her life had always been easy because whenever she faced a problem, her slave solved everything for her. But at that moment, Ilya slipped and fell face first into a puddle full of goo and dirt. She thought angrily that she hated that place. She remembered that one of her slaves had brought her there once, promising to help her level up, but he had died on the way. And now she was alone and stuck in that horrible swamp. Ilya realized that the monsters in the area were incredibly strong, but when she saw her Khan, Chukonchinen, she decided that he would be her new slave, her new target. She threw herself on the ground pretending to be injured and called for help, saying that she had been attacked by the monsters in the area. She believed that her Khan would easily fall into her trap because no one could ever resist her charm, and it wasn't possible for someone to leave a beauty like her in such a state. But Hirkin simply turned his back on her without saying anything. Ilya was completely shocked, couldn't believe what had happened, and wondered if he was really ignoring her beauty. Hirkin, on the other hand, looked at her and thought she was just another crazy person trying to fool him. Ilya was so angry that she bit her lip until it bled, furious at the contempt she had received. She wondered how he dared to treat her like that, but Hirkin remained calm as his skeletons finished off the lizard men around him. He found that woman incredibly annoying, and yet she kept following him, insisting on getting his attention. She kept pretending to be innocent, trying to waste his time. But Hirkin realized that there were no decent players in that damn game and decided that the best way to get rid of her was to sort it out straight away. He asked if she had lost anything, and Ilya said yes, that she had lost her sword during the fight in the swamp, and asked if he could help her get it back. Hirkin then asked if, when she got her sword back, she would leave for good, and Ilya said yes, thanking him enthusiastically as she thought that she had finally managed to fool him. Later, she took him to the place where the sword was. The object was lost on a small island in the middle of the swamp water. Hirkin reminded her of her promise to leave as soon as she recovered the sword and sent his skeletons to get the item because he wasn't an idiot to risk it alone. As she thanked him, Ilya thought that necromancers were nothing without their summons. At that moment, she saw that he was on his back and thought it was the perfect chance to kill him. But when she tried to attack him, Hirkin turned around with a psycho look on his face and said she was too slow. He grabbed her by the cloak and threw her hard in the opposite direction, causing her to fall face first into the swamp water. Ilya, outraged, shouted at him, asking if he thought he was going to get rid of her so easily after that, and threatened that his bodyguards would come after him. But Hirkin asked her to look back, and when she turned, she was faced with the lizard men who began to devour her mercilessly. Hirkin then thought that next time, if she really wanted to fool him, she would have to do a better job because he had already realized her intentions from the start and thought she was a complete fool. Hirkin thought he was tired of being tricked by people. He thought he had wasted too much time on it. Meanwhile, his little skeleton was distracted practicing his charm, and soon the three of them ended up getting beaten up. So Hirkin said they should learn from him and not from those weirdos. The player Ilya ended up dying, and Hirkin received a lot of points for it. He wasn't expecting so much XP and was surprised, so he started to think about what she had said before. Those bodyguards of hers seemed like a lie. He bet that a person like her didn't even have real bodyguards. But at that moment, he was already being watched by some nerds. Later, still in the swamp, Hirkin was confronting one of the nerds, and the fat man in the group said that that damn enemy of Ilya's was going to pay for what he had done. But Hirkin wondered why they were going to such lengths for her. It wasn't as if she was paying them for it. So he began to think that it was ridiculous for someone to do all that just to avenge a woman they had met in a game. The fat man then replied that he was doing it all because he loved her, after which he was cut in half and killed. Hirkin thought they were all a joke. He thought that crazy girl from before had tried to trick him and hadn't succeeded. He'd got rid of her, but now she wanted revenge. And it seemed she really did have bodyguards because when she asked for help, it seemed to have worked. Now all the nerds were after him, calling him Ilya's enemy. And Hirkin thought it was all insane because every day he met a different crazy person in that game. He was also anxious about that damned mission where he needed to find an egg, but so far, he hadn't found anything. And now he still had to deal with those assholes. Hakin thought he needed to finish off that woman once and for all, because if he left that place unprepared, he could get into even more trouble. So he took another war watch and got 5,000 gold, as well as a few items, including the Necklace of Promise, a super rare item that could be sold for 800,000. Hakin thanked that dead nerd for the reward. He thought that if they kept coming, he would kill them one by one because that was easy money. When another nerd showed up, Hakin confessed that it was he himself who had killed that Ilya and warned that anyone who tried to do anything would end up dead too. But when he realized that there were several coming at once, he ran away from that army of nerds. Hakin didn't understand why there were so many of them there. He thought that obsessive woman was taking it too seriously, so he threw his skeletons into the fray. But the nerds weren't scared. They used the power of love, and unbelievably, it really worked. They defeated the skeletons with ease, and Hakin began to realize that these guys were on a higher level than him. He understood that a fight against everyone at once was impossible to win at that point, so he decided that he would kill them all as soon as he leveled up. Later, he was in a much darker part of the swamp, and he thought that those nerds were really persistent, so he needed to keep moving so as not to get caught until he realized that he no longer recognized the place where he was. That environment seemed very different from all the rest of the lizard swamp, and he had already explored that swamp many, many times. Hakin began to think that this must be related to his mission. Perhaps this was the right place. Meanwhile, even the nerds were passing by looking for Hakin, and when they saw his skeletons, they realized that they were dancing. So the nerds wondered what was going on, calling it a skeleton ball. The chubby nerd was furious at the Necromancer's provocation. He took it as an insult to Ilya and stormed off in a rage, only to be caught by a large creature that he didn't notice approaching. He had entered the boss area of that place, and everyone was terrified when they saw the huge creature, the level 40 lizard dragon. Hakin, of course, was hiding and realized at that moment that the place he was in was the lizard dragon's nest. This was a boss with an extremely high defense fence, a lot of life, and a powerful attack requiring at least 20 level 40 players to defeat it. From what he remembered of his past life, the lizard dragon raid had already been completed a while ago. So normally, this boss shouldn't have been there at the time. However, as his related mission was in that place along with that egg, the monster ended up reappearing because of Hakin's mission. Meaning that if the lizard dragon was still there, that was exactly where it needed to be to complete the mission given by Ahimbri. It was then that Hakin realized something important. Ahimbri had sent him to that place alone to face a level 40 creature, a real raid boss, and Hakin thought that that wretched wizard was a scammer, but he was relieved to still have companions nearby, the nerds, who could serve as a distraction in the fight against the dragon. The nerds said they could just run away, but Hakin didn't intend to let them escape so easily, so he used enchantments on his skeletons to surround them all, completely blocking the way out. The nerds complained, saying they could force their way through, but the one who tried to do so was thrown into the sky by the dragon with a single blow. The other nerds realized too late that Hakin was already running, and he mentally thanked them for their sacrifices, promising never to forget them since now the way was clear for him to enter the dragon's empty nest. As soon as he entered, he started looking for the egg, but the place where it was supposed to be was completely empty. Hakin insisted on searching as he believed it had to be somewhere until he finally found something that looked like a very strange egg. In fact, it was more like an egg-shaped stone, but it still vaguely resembled a real egg, so he decided to take it with him. Soon afterwards, he realized that all his skeletons had been destroyed, which indicated that the dragon was now detecting the last living invader on the site, namely him. The dragon appeared, destroying everything around it, and Hakin realized that he was completely screwed. He knew he couldn't stay in the nest for long, so he decided to take the object that looked like the egg, hoping that it really was the item for the mission. And if it was something valuable, hoping even more that it was the double mission. Later, in the swamp, the legion of nerds was completely defeated, and the only one still alive saw Hakin approaching. Hakin commented that Warlord was a very interesting game as it gave freedom even to idiots like them. When the last nerd tried to reply, Hakin almost stuck his sword in his face, explaining that he wasn't joking when he played Warlord because there was a lot at stake and that next time, he wouldn't take it too easy. He said this to both that nerd and that damned woman and walked out of there, stepping on the bodies scattered on the ground. As he walked, Hakin thought that if they came after him again, it would turn into a real war. Now he wanted to make some money, so he decided to sell the exact location of the lizard dragon for 100,000 gold. Later, he went to deliver the egg directly to Ahimbri, claiming that he had brought the item he had asked for. Hakin thought it had to be the right thing to do as he didn't want to go back to that swamp ever again. Calmly, Ahimbri confirmed that this was exactly the item he was looking for and praised Hakin's work, saying that he had been much quicker than he had expected, especially for someone like him. Hyukin wondered if he was going to be humiliated by that NPC every time he completed a mission, so he asked what the next one would be. Hinbre explained that whenever they investigated the areas where the monsters were mutating, that kind of object was always found, and that for the time being, he had named it the Stone of Corruption. At that moment, Hyukin understood why those two people were after him. The Stone of Corruption was an extremely important item for the game's main mission, and it was clear that those players just wanted to make sure they got their hands on that egg because it directly impacted the progress of Warlord's main mission. Hyukin thought he was being completely fooled by that mission. He had never imagined that he was getting directly involved with the main mission of the entire game. While he was trying to understand this situation, Ahimbria apologized to him, saying that this mission was perhaps too big for someone of his level as they were dealing with an overwhelming and still unknown power, and he needed Hirakan to prove his worth. Ahimbria asked him what he thought about it and if he was ready to face corruption. Hirakan thought that he had plenty of willpower and that taking part in the main mission was a golden opportunity. He said he would fight with body and soul, but Ahimbria interrupted him, explaining that it wasn't the time yet as the monsters were too strong, and he didn't think a newcomer like Hirakan would be able to defeat them. Hirakan began to wonder if his level was really too low to continue the mission. Then Ahimbri said he could help but on one condition. If Hirakan said the words, "Please, great wizard Ahimbri, make me your disciple," then he would take him on as an apprentice and teach him. Later, Hirakan, left Ahimbri's house extremely angry after accepting that bastard's mission. He complained to himself that the wizard was a wretched pervert and that he hated him deeply even more for making him repeat that shameful phrase 3 times in a row. Meanwhile, in the lizard swamp, the raid finally defeated the lizard dragon, bringing the confrontation to a complete end. This was only possible because Hyukin himself had sold the exact location of the dragon, and the group celebrated their victory. The person who had helped the most during the preparation of the raid was the bespectacled knight, the same one who had been behind Hirakan earlier. He thanked everyone for their support, and, of course, the players wanted to share a good part of the reward with him. They said that if it hadn't been for him, they would never have made it. But the knight, known as Heeper, refused any kind of compensation, saying he hated breaking the rules. The other players were confused, wondering if he really didn't want the money, and some even wondered if he was doing it all just to help people. As he walked past them, Heeper said that all the items inside the nest belonged to the group, but inside, he was thinking how lucky he was to have this chance. He never imagined that he would have the opportunity to get his hands on the Stone of Corruption. As soon as he heard that the lizard dragon had reappeared, he was afraid that the Heiho Mask Guild was also involved. But when he learned that the dragon was still alive, he saw a real chance. So he ran straight to the nest to get the Stone of Corruption. But when he got there, the place was completely empty. The stone was no longer there. He was so frustrated that he shouted out loud, overcome with rage. Later, Jae-hyun commented to the allies that he could finally fulfill his wish. After going through so much pain and hardship, he now had enough money to do what he wanted most. He said that with all that money, he would finally be able to buy meat, and that after so long, he would finally be able to eat properly again. Jae-hyun commented that he had made a lot of extra money by killing those nerds, so he converted it all to real money, thinking that he was now set for life. But as soon as he made the deposit, it was like being stabbed in the chest. The credit card took some of it. The household bills took some, the rent took what was left. In the end, there wasn't even enough money left to order ordinary food, let alone meat. Jae-hyun wondered why he was so broken like that, given that he had worked so hard, fought so hard, and still seemed to be in the same place. Then he received a message from Romini asking if he was still alive. She said she wanted to make more videos with him. Jae-hyun realized that he had completely forgotten about her with everything that was going on. Maybe he really couldn't make videos with those chasing him, but Jae-hyun didn't think he should worry so much that he starved either. At the end of the day, he was just an innocent gamer trying to survive in the midst of chaos. Jae-hyun thought he couldn't stand it any longer, so he decided to do everything his own way. Later, he appeared inside a dungeon known as the Graveyard in the Forest of the Dead, ready to record his next adventure.